All right, welcome to episode 54 of the At Bat Podcast presented by WARR Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news, as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, along with my co-host Miles Porter, and we're also joined by Gabe Wilkins from WARR Media's Open Run. How are we doing today, guys? How we doing, Miles?
Doing good, man. Had an amazing win last night. That felt amazing. Had a go ahead double against a very good team, the Sheboygan A's. Again, it kind of a packed house last night at the game, and so it felt great, man. It felt great, feeling good going into this weekend for two more games. So yeah, doing good
Yo,
right now.
I'll clip. I'm gonna clip it. I'm gonna clip it on here. I'm gonna stitch it because you sent me the videos. But dude, also I saw the videos where you were showing emotion. I was like, my boy Miles is fired up. Like,
I've been watching
That
too.
was one of the biggest hits of my baseball career to this point because of the stage it was on, the team we were playing. And man, bro, anytime you put your team in front or you tie the game, whatever the case is, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, trust me. Like, the only thing I've ever comes close, and it's like not even that close because it's softball and like little kids can like hit that ball too. But I'll tell you one thing, Miles, I got a triple once in my short softball career, and there were three people in the stands, and I thought I hit one in the World Series. You know what I mean? So that's as close as I can get, Miles. So you know what I'm saying? So that's
Hey man, the moment's the moment, no matter where it is, it feels good.
I needed an oxygen tank after that, but that's it is what it is. Gabe, how we doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain. It's always a pleasure to be on talking baseball with you guys. I definitely caught your footage on your baseball game, Miles. I'm like, man, we need you on the south side with the runners on score position, man.
Hey, Rick,
we need some help, man.
For real,
you play
you
some right field for us, man.
Poke me out there. I'm gonna throw some people out.
Be like, yeah, they're gonna be like, hey, Miles, you play second base? You can play second base.
Man. Yeah, we need some help over. We need some help on 35th Shields, man.
I'm like, yeah, I play second. Yeah. I can make it look good. I play thirds. Not
there you go. Yeah,
we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, true. I was gonna say when Yohan's injured, there you go. There, you know what I'm saying. Miles can go in there and do work. So
man, pinch hit something.
Yeah, for real. But that's good to hear, Miles. Love to hear, man. Miles' corner is always on fire, and love to see the emotion and you get raking like always, bro. But let's go now to Major League Baseball in Chicago. We'll start with the White Sox this time around. They're 32-44. They lost 7 of the last 10, but still they're in the hunt. 4.5 games back in the AL Central. Gabe, over the last week, is there anything that pops out to you for the Sox? I mean, they lost the series to the Mariners. They lost the series to the Rangers. But look, man, they've been in every single game. They're playing competitive games. It's just they haven't been able to, get that, last run across to beat the opposition. They still got guys like Luis Robert, who putting the team on his back. He's got a 930 OPS in June, 855 overall for the season. Jake Berger cooled off a little bit, but that was he was so hot. You kind of expected it to hit at some point. But yeah, overall thoughts on the last week or so for the Sox.
Been tough.
Mm-hmm.
Every game feels like a playoff game. And when you put yourself in an early hole, like they did in the month of April, losing 10 games in a row, that's the pressure that you place on yourself as an organization. Now, you said they 4.5 games out. They were as a 2. Now they're 6 games out. And that's due to losing 2 out of 3 at the hands of the Texas Rangers, albeit one of the best teams in baseball. It's no shame in that. But when you have series that are on the table, such as last weekend against Seattle and the series before that against the LA Dodgers, and you have a 4-0 lead in the rubber match of that series in the bottom of the 6th, and you give up a grand slam only to lose it in extras, it's just tough. It's very tough. You talk about Jake Berger and him cooling off. Yeah, that was to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the biggest reasons as to why we're seeing that is because of a lack of plate discipline from Jake Berger.
Mm-hmm.
Can't swing at everything. Sliders low and away. Lay off that. That's ball 4. It was a situation. I'll give you an example. Bottom of the 8th, 5-2, bases loaded. Yasmani Grandal strikes out with 1 out That's 2 outs. Jake Burger had a 3-0 count. Takes the next 2 pitch, takes the 4th pitch in the at bat. That's a strike. Fouls off the 5th pitch. The 6th pitch is a slider low and away. It's ball 4. But he's so busy trying to make things happen. And I get it. He swings at it and he strikes out. But in that situation, you can't do that. That pitcher has nowhere to put you on a diamond. They gotta learn how to take walks more as a team, stay in discipline, especially in counts that involve 2 strikes. And as I've always said before, this team has to find a way to get on the same page. It's amazing that they're even in this division. Mm-hmm. And they're in this division, let's be real, because the Minnesota Twins have not played up to par in spite of being in first place. Teams like the Cleveland Guardians, offense is anemic. Mm-hmm. And you can say the same about the White Sox at certain stretches where when they have runners in scoring position, they're not cashing in consistently. And they're one of the highest teams percentage-wise in regards to chase rate. It's just not clicking right now. And as much as I love Pedro Grifol, and he's a first-year manager still learning, he has to do a better job with managing his bullpen. Mm. I'm at the game Tuesday night. It's a 4-4 game. Gregory Santos is giving you an inning and 2/3 of work. Runners on, I believe, first and third or second and third. Corey Seager comes up. He's batting over 300 this season against lefties. And you decide to take Santos out of that game to go lefty-lefty with Aaron Bummer, who left-handed hitters have been batting over 300 against this season. I don't get it. You know, it's like you got to know your personnel. And my question to Pedro Grifol and this team will be is who do you trust when the money's on the line? Because you can't afford to punt games when you've dug such a large hole for yourself to come back from. Yeah, you're only 6 games out, and it's not impossible to come back from that. A great week of baseball could get you right back in it. But you got to build proper habits. And this series against Boston is huge, especially when you consider that the White Sox have had 12 homestands this season, or 12 series at home this season, and they've only won 4 out of 12. And the 4 that they've won were all against opponents in your division. So what that tells me is you know how to play against your division, but do you know how to play against the rest of the major league squads as well as you do against your division? They haven't proven that thus far this season. I think that's why we are where we are as a ball club from a fan's perspective, watching these games on a night-to-night basis and being there.
Yeah, and you make some good points. I mean, they're 15-11 against the Central and 4-12 against the East, 6-10 against the West, 7-11 in interleague play. And for a team that, you know, over the years, I think it was like maybe a couple of years ago where they were just elite against left-handers, 7-11 against left-handers this year. But it's one of those things where, especially when it comes to, because I know we talked about it before, how like the criticism was with Ross and the bullpen and all that, right? But at the same time, the White Sox, for example, they have some good arms. So you got to learn how to take care of those arms and to use the right ones at the right time. You know, because they actually have weapons in there. So that does, you know, that is true. Miles, from your perspective over the last week for the Sox, like what have you thought about them? Is it one of those things where, like how Gabe said, you know, you just need a week of good baseball, but they just haven't been able to do that over the last few weeks? Is this a team that, you know, in your opinion, would you say leaning towards selling, or is it one of those things where, as Gabe stands, still in the race, so why do that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this division, they're never truly out of it. Mm-hmm. And even when and I laughed at the beginning when you kind of were talking about their record and where they stand within their division, and it was sort of funny to me because I'm like, wow, it's is crazy. It's, you know, I've always said this is the team that you want to see win. You want to see them do well. Mm-hmm. Sox fans deserve it. These players work hard for it, but at the same time, I don't know if, because if there's one thing I'm always preaching to people is that the season is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes, it is.
So in so many cases, it's like maybe there are teams like the White Sox who are having a tough time right now, and with a division like that, who the hell says they're not going to turn this thing around in July? But I really like what Gabe said over Pedro Grifol, is like, who's your guy? Who are you going to trust? Who's a guy that's really going to turn this thing around in terms of arms for this team? Because offensively, I am very impressed for the most part. But yeah, we got some discipline issues going on for sure. And I think with the White Sox, is just really trying to find some cohesiveness. It's always been the biggest thing I've said with the White Sox, is that they just don't feel like one unit sometimes. And so with this entire ball club, they're never truly going to be out of it. But if you look at the season from a whole, and this is a team that were to get a wild card spot, how is this team going to play? How far are they going to go? I would prefer to not see them get, blown up, especially for Sox fans. I don't want to see that. Who knows? Maybe a few moves at the deadline, maybe it would turn this team around. For me, I think it's hard for me to put a finger on what mentality this team needs to kind of have in order to turn this thing around or have some sort of hope going into the next year and years to come.
Yeah, when you talk about buying and selling, Miles, as well as Saul, my outlook is this. I'm not buying in this division with this current team with the way that they're playing right now, but I'm not selling completely either.
Right.
The only pieces that I would be interested in selling are the guys that are on expiring contracts. And if I did it, I would follow the same template in which Kenny Williams followed in 2004. For example, when he traded a 20-game winner, Esteban Loaiza, to the New York Yankees in exchange for not only cash, but Jose Contreras, an arm that he really liked and an arm that proved to be vital the following year when they went on their run towards the World Series. And Contreras followed that up with an all-star nod in 2006 and so forth, had a nice career here. And then he also followed that move up in 2004 in that same year with getting Freddie Garcia from Seattle, who he gave up Miguel Olivo for in a blockbuster trade as well. So if I'm looking to make trades, if I'm the White Sox and I'm trading guys on expiring contracts, I'm trading to either build up my farm system, which is depleted, or to build or fulfill rather positions of need, such as maybe getting a second baseman. Like I would consider the Yankees, because they have such a log jam at second base and with middle infielders. I would ask, like, are you interested in trading away Gleyber Torres? Potentially? Like, how bad do you really want Lucas Giolito? I would ask that. Now, would I like to see Lucas Giolito go? No. But if they're not interested in coming to an agreement, both sides, that is, with the White Sox front office and Giolito's representatives, they're not interested in coming to agreement on a contract extension, you're going to have to get something for him as opposed to letting him walk for nothing. And they're going to have to shore up right field as well. And they can't be cheap about some of these issues, which is really why the fans are mad. But a lot of fans that say, well, you need to sell. No, when you say sell, that means everything must go. You have to do a little bit of buying and you got to do a little bit of selling. It's kind of like going shopping and exchanging goods at the barter store or whatever like that. That's where the White Sox are right now. The only teams that I think in baseball that are in a state where they're in a true rebuild is Oakland, Kansas City, Washington, and Colorado. Everybody else is playing for either this year or down the line. I still think the White Sox can compete because they're only 6 games back. And one thing we as fans do sometimes is we play schedules. We don't think about the game within the game. And that on any given day, no matter what your record is, if you don't come with it, you can get beat. And I think that's what this White Sox team is learning. Yeah, you got all this talent, but that don't mean nothing. At the end of the day, you got to work for it, and you got to build consistency. Starting pitchers have to go deeper in the games. Michael Kopech said it after his performance on Wednesday night. my performance was embarrassing. And the reason why he's saying that is because he didn't go 6 solid innings.
Mm-hmm.
Where he didn't avoid the damage that he could have because he was walking guys. He didn't walk many, but just 1 or 2 guys when you leaving sliders up in the zone to Duran to hit a 2-run home run off of you. That's the ball game in a nutshell. And then your pen not holding it down. Everybody got to get on the same page. And a lot of guys got to do some soul searching on this squad too and ask themselves, who do I really want to be as a player? And not only who do I want to be as a player, what's my role on this team? And am I willing or not to accept that?
Yeah, no, you're right. And also just the fact that, and Miles, we said this, me and Gabe said this last week, like there's 6 weeks of baseball before the deadline. That's a long time. And not to mention, especially in this division, in these divisions, I should say, with the AL Central and NL Central, like it's just so much time to work things out and all that. But the one thing I did want to talk about with the White Sox before we move on to the Cubs is that Jonah Heim slide, where the White Sox ended up winning the ball game, or sorry, the Jonah Heim play as he was behind the plate, and it was Elvis Andrus who was sliding into home plate. Gabe, your thoughts on that? You said you were at that game. So from your perspective, how did you see it, and how do you see it? When they played it on the jumbotron, what did you think about that play?
It was a bang bang play. The more I watched the replay, I don't really know whether or not he was safe. It was really one of those 50-50 calls. However, if that's catcher's interference, I feel sorry for catchers in today's game, because it's like you got to protect the plate. You got to give them at least some leeway to protect the plate. And I've seen worse catcher interferences than that, if that's what they deem to be a catcher's interference violation. But the fan in me was excited the longer they took to review the replay, because usually the longer they take to review it, the more likely it is that the call is going to get overturned. And that's what happened. And it proved to be a huge break and a pivotal play in a series, because who knows whether or not it's a Rangers sweep if not for that. And I understand Bruce Bochy's frustration with the call, but it was a game back in 2014 that I recall that came down to a play at the plate between the White Sox at the time and the Giants when Bruce Bochy was the manager of the Giants. And he got the benefit of the doubt. He just didn't happen to get it this time around.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, it's like in the NBA where, they call foul and then like you're like, oh, thank you. And then like they call foul on you and you're like, what the hell? It's one of those things,
Right.
It's reactionary type of thing. Miles, were you able to see that play? And just in general, from a player's perspective, do you guys have rules like that in the league, that Milwaukee Jaguars, where it limits the catcher in a way where they can't, be guarding the line or whatever? Like from your perspective, will that play, like how is that for a player?
It's definitely tough, because your mentality coming in is to just be safe. You want to try to get a hand in there. So you're not really thinking too much about, like, am I going to be safe? It's more, how am I going to be safe? It's tough for catchers. I can't speak from a catching standpoint. I think it's a very tough call. I think that's a very tough call to make. If I'm a runner, from that perspective, I feel like I got a clear path to the base. It's just a matter of, did I get my hand? Did I get my leg in there first? And I don't know. I didn't think an interference call was necessary. But kind of like representing Bruce Bochy, like what Gabe just said, this rule became something very, very much more seriously implemented after Buster Posey and Scott Cousins in 2011. That very unfortunate collision at home plate that pretty much trickled down to all levels of baseball. So it's definitely, I guess if we're playing by today's standards, I'm not too surprised. But listen, we got a lot of eyes on this game. There's a lot of people who reviewed this call to F it up. That's just plain and simple. That's just me talking from a player perspective, a non-fan perspective. That's brutal, in my opinion. Now, there's these things in baseball where kind of some of these rules, there's there's kind of blind spots in some of these rules in baseball right now, and it's what makes the game unique. When simple as a runner, running on a drop third strike and creating his own lane and getting called out or not, whatever the kid, this is what makes baseball very human. This call was human, but it was also really stupid at the same time. Not the umpire's fault. Not the umpire's fault at all. There's a lot of eyes for you to go all the way to New York for them to screw up the call as well. Had a clear lane to the plate, in my opinion. But I guess by today's standards, we can't be too surprised about it. But at what point we do have to kind of hold some of these guys accountable. But I love that it worked out in the White Sox benefit, so we'll take it. But definitely don't want to see too much of that going forward, especially if we got this whole review system just for the call to still be wrong.
Yeah, and just the fact that at least in it was kind of like both teams ended up kind of having a win with the White Sox having to win that game, and then the Jonah Heim with that celebration. You saw that he had that celebration after hitting that home run in the third game.
Yeah,
that little replay.
I was at that game too.
Yeah,
I saw that, and I was afraid after leaving the park on Tuesday night, knowing how Texas gets down as an offense, that they were gonna be real PO and come out, with a vengeance. And they definitely did, hitting 2 home runs, and the 2 home runs that they hit had men on base both times. A 2-run shot from Duran and then a 3-run shot from Jonah Heim, the best hitter in the game with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. He showed why there, and it worked out in their favor. I guess they definitely made sure that they were not gonna be denied victory 2 nights in a row. I tell you that. So they took it personally.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. A couple other things too, and Tim Anderson, he continues to be day to day, right, with the shoulder injury, right, because he wasn't in the lineup on Wednesday. I saw. So hopefully that he isn't out of the lineup too long. Need him to get hot. And then of course, shout out Zach Remillard, bro. Like, that was crazy. Man. Like, the whole fact that he was able to go 3 for 3 in his debut after 7 years in the White Sox minor league system. He had that he had a walk, including a game. It was a game tying and game winning hit, right?
Yeah, on Saturday against Seattle. And this is a guy who's been in almost 1,000 minor league games in his career, gets called up in the wake of the Yoan Moncada injury and makes a name for himself. And he's really the reason why the White Sox were able to avoid a sweep at the hands of the Mariners and the Rangers, coming through with the single that drove Elvis Andrus home on that controversial play at the plate with Jonah Heim. So he's been doing his thing in big situations when his team is needed the most. And he's really been a nice story to see as a fan when you consider how this year has gone for the White Sox. So Zach Remillard definitely is a guy that deserves some attention and some praise for what he's been able to do in a spot that is really very tough when this team needs so much production, with guys like Yoan Moncada out and Tim Anderson, who, as you alluded to, is day-to-day, pinch hit it in Tuesday's win against the Rangers. But it's said to be coming back on Friday, but no one really knows this time. But I wish him well with whatever he's going through, just personally, as well as with the shoulder soreness.
Yeah, and with Remillard too, like, seeing his at bats, you get to see you get to see the veteranness in him, like all of his at bats, like how selective he is, how confident he is when he goes in there. It's such a difference from like a guy who's like 21 or 22 going in there and swinging the bat. So good for him, and love to see that like type of story. So the as Gabe alluded to, White Sox take on the Red Sox for 3. Then they go on that 7-game West Coast trip. They take on the Angels and the A's, who are not pushovers anymore compared to what they were at the beginning of the season. I think they still own they now own our owners again of the worst record in baseball. I think maybe by a game or so, but even then they've been playing better compared to what they were before. So hopefully the Sox are able to get some wins there and hopefully have a more positive week. On the north side of Chicago, the Cubs 36-38, one of the hotter teams in baseball right now, winners of 10 of the last 11. If it wasn't for the Reds, and we'll talk about the Reds, of course, the Cubs might be the hottest team in baseball. They're definitely up there right now. They swept the Pirates twice in the last week. It beat the Orioles 2 out of 3. And it's been one of their biggest stories right now has been Mike Talkman, man, because he's an 88 at bats as an 805 OPS. His on base percentage is a crispy .407. The rotations dealing. Marcus Stroman. Honestly, Marcus Stroman, I feel like as much as he's been an NL Cy Young candidate, I feel like nobody's talking about the fact that this might be his best season ever. And he's been in the big leagues for a while now, and this might be his best season ever. So, also Albert Alzolay, he's the Cubs' new closer really at this point. And also just. And he's probably going to end up being the closer for the rest of the season because, as many people have heard now, Cody Hoyer had a setback earlier this week. He threw out his arm. I don't know exactly what it was. I think they're still examining his arm. But that's just, oh man, when I saw that, it was just a tough pill to swallow because it's a guy that has barely pitched for the Cubs, has barely pitched in the last year in general, and he was trying to come back. And for a team that desperately needs a bullpen piece, he would have been super clutch to have in there. And it's unfortunate that that's not going to happen. So, but Miles, let's start with you, man. Over the last week, what are some of the things that have stood out for the Cubs, the red hot Cubs? They've been playing great baseball right now. And as of right now, they sit 3.5 games back. Like I said, if it wasn't for the Reds being red hot, like super hot, they might be closer to first place at this point, maybe even in first. Who knows? But what are the takeaways you have over last week for the Cubs?
Energy, enjoyment. They came off a very, very long road series. If I'm not mistaken, I think that might be the longest road trip of the year.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. It was kind of bad for that road series. So I think them coming back to Wrigley and being back in front of the home faithful and kind of seeing guys, it just looked like they were just more alive. The Cubs look very alive right now. And this is also a very up and down division. We saw a team like the Pirates start off very strong this year, only to what today is Thursday the 22nd. They're second to last in this division now. Yeah. And so this has been a very entertaining year, I think, for the NL Central because, like I said earlier, this is a very young division, but a division that's on the rise. You look at a team like the Reds, that's scary, man. That's a scary team. So to see the Cubs really just come together the way they have since coming back home and going into London, one of my favorite places that I visited, it's amazing. Having that good energy going into that series, that's just great. That's just really good for the Cubs. So I like where it's heading. They come back home and we take on the Phillies and the Guardians. Great games overall. So I like where this Cubs team is heading. Just got to stay together. Christopher Morel. I mean, what else do we have to say? Mike Talkman, Dansby Swanson catching a little bit of fire. Marcus Stroman, who is voicing his opinion about wanting to stay a Cub. It's just cool. It's cool right now. But it's a long season. And I was saying this earlier, bro. And you guys have heard me say it. This team may suck in May, and then June's gonna come around and be like, oh my gosh, this is one of the greatest lineups in the world. This is baseball, bro. It is just one of those teams with the Cubs. It's just you got to give them time to kind of figure out certain things in terms of winning and losing. So I love where it's heading, and I'm hoping to get out to the ball game next week as well.
Miles, and I asked Gabe last week, but what are your thoughts on the Stroman thing? Because I love that Stroman's coming out saying he wants to stay because I want him to stay. But apparently, it's one of those things where he probably, like a lot of front offices don't like when players do that type of stuff where they come out and say things like, oh, like they haven't talked to me about an extension at all, whatever. What are your thoughts about that situation? And then also in the fact that, do you think because a lot of people still think, I've heard plenty of takes where a lot of people assume that he's going to get, there's a good chance he gets traded. I don't think so. But I just think it wouldn't be very smart for a lot of reasons. But I know that if they did try to trade him, you would get a massive haul because he's still got a year left. And I know that he could opt out at the end of the year. So it's a whole thing. But anyways, overall thoughts on the Stroman situation and what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on how the Cubs are playing by the
Mhm.
time the deadline comes around. If we are playing the long game right now, I think it's smart for Hoyer to kind of see how he pitches the rest of the season, how he pitches in the second half. Where's his Cubs team at? Where are they going to be in the wild card or the division? How is he going? I think there's a lot of things to plan. I think one of the worst things that you can do is ship him off by the deadline, because then we didn't even get the full year of what it could have been. I think you got to let him pitch this entire season, and kind of to see where we go from there. We don't know what his ERA is going to be like after the All-Star game. It's such a common thing in baseball where certain players are one way the first half and they are a whole different way the second half. You gotta see this guy you gotta see if he's gonna continue this amazing stuff for an entire season. I think one of the worst things that Hoyer can do is ship him by the deadline and get more prospects. Bro, we got prospects. Stop. Enough. Stop. I'm so tired of this. Like we got prospects. We got guys. We got a draft coming up. We're good. Stop. After a while, I'm one of those fans where I'm like, bro, all right, who's his prospect's name? I'm sure he's great, but we're not good now, and so let this guy let this guy really just pitch this entire year, show what he's made of. How is he going to lead this team for the rest of the year? What kind of leader is he going to be in September, or the Cubs are in the playoffs? How is he going to perform then? Let the season play out. I do not. I swear. I swear. If he gets traded and I hear something about prospects or players to be named later, I'm gonna punch a hole in my iPad. Like, stop. I don't want to hear any more about this. We just dealt with this a few years ago. We shipped our big three. Mm-hmm. Are we still rebuild? Are we still going to keep getting more prospects? We have prospects. We have a good future. Let him pitch. Let him pitch and then make your decision. Don't ship him now and say that you want more young talent. Jed.
the threat's there. Miles has said. Miles has said. And real quick, I just wanted to say that. Yeah, and we were talking about a little bit about it last week, and just the fact that this guy wants to be here is so bad. Like, you could just tell. Yeah. Like, this dude ad nauseum talks about the fan base and about Wrigley and the energy, and I think
loves it.
Yeah, exactly. I think the whole him lashing out and saying, "Oh, they haven't offered me anything," I think it's really just frustration because he wants to be here and he wants to stay here.
To stay there.
Exactly.
And players have done that in the past too. We end up shipping them off.
Exactly. Yeah, and even like
the guy that doesn't want to be here.
You're 100% right. You're right. Right. Like, and it's a thing that at least like I still think that they have a good chance of re-signing because of how much he wants to be here and all that. But I think that even with Jed Hoyer, because you mentioned him, I think ultimately, and I said to Gabe too, is that I think ultimately he probably thought best case scenario is that they're in the hunt for a little bit and they cool off, and then they could just trade it. They could make trades and all that because of the 1-year deals, because of Bellinger, because of Mancini and all that. Like, obviously he wouldn't come out and say that, but that's just my thoughts. I think that's how he would like it to happen because he knows the Cubs are still like a year away from at least competing for like a World Series or at least like a division or whatever. So in this case, I don't think he expected the Cubs to play like this the way they're playing right now. But yeah, other than that, it's a whole thing, and I agree with you. I really hope they don't trade him because it just wouldn't really make a lot of sense in that case, because then you're just left with Justin Steele is an ace, but when you have 2 aces on the staff, like, I mean, that's insane. So yeah,
like but 2 good moves away from the deadline from being
you're right,
somewhat of more of a threat in the Central.
You're right.
Why are we going to ruin that?
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're right. And I told Gabe that too, the fact that like these 2 teams with the Cubs and the White Sox, and because Gabe was saying that, yeah, he's not going to give up on this team regardless of right now where they're at because of how these divisions are. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, you go into a playoff series with Stroman, Steele as your top 2. Hell, Hendricks is pitching way better now. Like, that's a threat. That's scary for some teams. Like, that a lot of teams don't have that. The Reds, who we're going to talk about in a second, they don't have that. They barely have one good pitcher when you're talking about Hunter Green and all that. Like, they have prospects, I get it, but we're talking about this year. So like, yeah, that I don't understand that. And with the White Sox as well, you go into a series when you know you're gonna throw out their Kopech, Cease. Like, I mean, some people are not gonna like that either. It's gonna be it's a fierce duo. So yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah.
Gabe, your opinion on just anything Miles said, but also just from what how the Cubs have been playing over last week.
And they've been playing real well. And
Yeah.
I think it all started near the tail end of that road trip, taking 2 out of 3 against the San Francisco Giants.
Mhm.
And what they did was they took that momentum that they gained in San Francisco and brought it back home. And you
Mhm.
saw that, with them coming up huge, sweeping Pittsburgh at home, and then taking 2 out of 3 and being in all 3 of those games, might I add, against a tough Baltimore Orioles team that's not backing down from anybody in the American League East. And then to go to Pittsburgh again and sweep, that's been nice. And the one thing that I got to give them credit for is I talked about the player Mike Tauschman last week, came up big on Tuesday night with a home run, key insurance run late against Pittsburgh to help them take game 2 of that series 4-0. But like their starting pitchers are only allowing like 3 runs or less. And when your starting pitchers can do that and go 6 innings or more, as we know, those are quality starts in baseball. And those typically give you great chances to win. And Marcus Stroman, I was just seeing some on MLB Network the other day where he has the longest winning streak since Yu Darvish at the top of this decade in 2020. So he's having a hell of a year.
Also on the Cubs. That was on the Cubs too, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the longest winning streak by a Cub pitcher since Yu Darvish. And when you look at how he's been performing and pitching in a pivotal year of his career, that's great. And if he really wants to be there, should the Cubs not lowball him when it comes to negotiating with him at the table, I don't see why not. And it kind of makes you wonder on the outside looking in, as I am, well, if you didn't sell off the guys that you had 2 years ago and you kind of intermix them with the guys that you currently have, man, you might be atop of this division right now. Because I always felt like a couple years ago watching them sell that it was hilarious to me. It was always, especially when you have an owner who is a said to be Cubs fan and wants to build a winning product, and winning has a price. And I think sometimes these owners have to understand that it's too much money rolling around in this sport right now to not be spending. And you talk about how the Reds, who as incredible as they've been, and I love that team, and I think that they are for real. And I think the insertion of Ellie De La Cruz and bringing up guys like Andrew Abbott has played a role in that. They're going to have to give up something in order to get something to try and maximize on this current year in which they're contending in the National League Central. And they look as though they're going to be around, at least for the next few months, atop of the Central with a chance to win it and make a playoff run. And I think a lot of these teams in the league need to really assess where they are. And if you within 6 games or less of your division, if not at the top of it, you got to be seeking a buy. You may not buy as much as a team that's like, such as like Tampa Bay or let's say Texas, but you have to buy. You have to. And the Cubs are in a good spot right now. But with that said, you got St. Louis coming up in London. You got Philadelphia back at home next week from Tuesday through Thursday, followed by a weekend series with Cleveland. And then Milwaukee and New York on the road for your last 7 games to close the All-Star break. Those are pivotal series that you have to win. And taking care of business against St. Louis, a division rival, will really be a nice step in the right direction, because it's going to get tough going into July these first several days prior to the All-Star break.
No, yeah, you're right, man. And I think, as you were talking about the Reds, and I did want to talk about them a little bit, just the fact that how great they're playing right now. I believe they've won 11 in a row, and it kind of bounced back a little bit from just in general from the NL Central, because they're Miles mentioned the Pirates. I mean, the Reds and the Pirates just personify this division, right? Where like one week you're hot, the next week you lose 9 in a row, like the Pirates have now, and they're 5 games back now. They were, they were on top of the world. They felt like how the Reds feel right now. They were on top of the world until they faced the Cubs at Wrigley, swept there, and then they went back to PNC and then were swept there. They even brought up their top prospect against the Cubs, the catcher Henry Davis. And he played a good series, but you got something to say, Miles?
It's like you lose. It's like you lose a street fight. You're like, no, you know what? Come to my house. Come to my house. Yeah, and then you lose there.
You bring out your big brother. You're like, my big brother.
I don't want to fight no more. yeah. I got mine. Oh, he gave up 3 home runs. Never mind. I got mine. Oh, he walks guys. Never mind. You got it.
You're right. Yeah, we really do. Yeah, we really. And not only that, to make matters worse for the Pirates, their Connect jerseys came out today, and they didn't look too pretty, in my opinion. I know it's kind of hard to make a Connect jersey, so what it seems like, it looks like it's pretty hard because a lot of teams don't have a great one. But I mean, not everyone can have a White Sox Southside jersey, right, Gabe? Because I mean,
I know.
That's hands down still the best one.
I still feel like that's the best City Connect jersey in the league. I don't care what no one says.
That jersey's tough.
I think the 100%. Diamondbacks are a close second. I like a lot of the gear that they release with their City Connect jerseys as well. Outside the White Sox, the Diamondbacks, and the Marlins, I don't see nobody really messing with those 3 teams.
Yeah, no, and it even made an appearance. I started, because the second season of The Bear came out last night. I was watching an episode, and it shows up on there. They have a little pennant with the White Sox Southside thing on there.
They've been showing a lot of love to the White Sox.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I took up watching that show. I got to give a shout out to my friend Dominic Casaretto, who's a big fan of it. And they were like talking about Minnie Minoso and stuff. And, like throwing puns at Cub fans. I was like, wow, they really trying to identify with like blue collar Southsiders. So I was like, that's cool. You don't see that too much with these national televised shows that are based out of Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, the one of the guys that works there too, he's not a prominent character in it, but he wears a Sox hat all the whole time. He's
right.
wearing a Sox hat.
I peeped it.
Yeah, and then I think in the first season they even mentioned Alfonso Rivas, and I was like, what?
They did.
like just the most like random Cubs player they said it on there, so it's cool to see. But yeah, no, the Pirates, their future's bright. There's no doubt about it. They got a lot of prospects. They got O'Neal Cruz, who unfortunately is injured this year. Okay, Brian Hayes. They have plenty of guys. It's just they cooled off, and you never know. They could be back later this season. You never know with how crazy this Central is. But yeah, with the Reds, they're super hot, and they, like I said, won their last 11 games, and Ellie De La Cruz, it looks like the real deal, and just that whole lineup is just. They just seem to have such a good core and such a good relationship with each other. That clubhouse looks awesome. I mean, Jonathan India is doing work. Tyler Stevenson, those guys are the core of the team, and they're playing well right now. And they could easily take the division. I know that for sure. I know I did say that they don't have a lot of starting pitching, but to take this division, you obviously don't need that much of starting pitching compared to other divisions. So I think if they want to make a playoff run, which they know they can, they're definitely going to have to go out there and get a starting pitcher. And they definitely have the stuff to do it because their minor league system's loaded. So they could go out there and get a good hitter out there to stack in their lineup and all that. So we'll see what happens. But that just says it all with the Central and how good these young players are. And like a lot of people say too, is that you never know. Right now, everyone's making fun of the Central, and in a couple of years, speaking more for the NL Central, the AL Central, I'm not too sure. I mean, I know the Royals have a lot of great young players and all that, but with the NL Central, there's so much young talent. I mean, this could be one of the best divisions in baseball in a few years, just because of how many prospects the Brewers have, the Reds have, the Cubs have. So who knows what happens there? Hopefully it's something good. But one more thing with the Cubs, they're gonna go to London as Miles said. That's why I'm wearing my Tottenham Hotspur hat. Got to represent London. And unfortunately they're not playing there. The Tottenham Hotspur have one of the best stadiums in the world. That's where they play the NFL games. They play them because they have the retractable. It's badass how they have the fields. But they're playing it in West Ham Stadium, which is an Olympic stadium, London Stadium. I think it's a pretty cool stadium, but not as cool as Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But it is pretty cool that they're going to go out there and play those games against the Cardinals. And the fact that they maneuvered it to where they have they have Steele going game 1 on Saturday and Stroman going on Sunday. I mean, that's just got me even more fired up. But Miles, what are your thoughts on that, man? Like, how cool is that to get to go out there? What are your expectations? And what do you take away? Because I mean, look, the Red Sox and Yankees series from years back, those games were like 25-22. Like it was like insane. But what do you expect from those series? Do you think they're gonna like juice up the balls again or whatever?
Well, you know what? We maybe. I mean, I have a lot of confidence in still going that game. But and he's going against Wayno, who's been getting hit very hard this year. Yep. So I'm expecting the Cubs to come out swinging. Honestly, I'm expecting a lot of offense from this Cubs team, but the Cardinals are still the Cardinals. I think this is a team that you still have to respect at the end of the day. Nolan Arenado, he's my idol. He's the reason why he's one of the reasons why I play third base. But Ram Samir is my favorite third baseman of all time. Different conversation, another day. But no, I think it's gonna be a good series, man. I think it's gonna be really good. I really like that Steele Stroman combo that they got going, and they're facing Jack Flaherty, who almost has a 5 ERA. I'm expecting the Cubs to hit. I'm expecting them to hit very well, but I think it's going to be pretty entertaining on both sides. But I think the Cubs are going to have a good series against this ball club because they're much different from the last time we played them. So feeling good about it. And London's awesome, man. I got to go back at some point. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, just dude, every time I watch soccer games from there and they show those the skylines and all, just in general, because I think it's so cool. Like they even, when I saw this video that the Cubs posted where they were talking about just the what the players think of the city and all that. And I think Goldschmidt said that it's cool because it's like a mixture of like the old and new. They have like the palace like in the middle, and then like the skyscrapers or whatever. It looks awesome. So definitely it's on my bucket list for sure. But hey, Gabe, well, what about you? What do you think about the series? And is it one of those series? Are you gonna wake up 9 a.m. on Sunday to watch that game?
I don't know if I'll be up that early, as I'll probably still be sleeping in a little bit, getting ready to go to the ballpark to see the Red Sox and the White Sox. But it's nice to see that the MLB is continuing its tradition with the London series. And it's good to see two-story franchises taking part in it. And I'm excited, to see what the Cubs have to offer. And I'd be watching because, as you know, I've always had an affinity for the St. Louis Cardinals. And Jordan Walker is a guy who has been incredible. Is currently on a 13-game hitting streak, if I'm not mistaken. And he started the year on a 12-game hitting streak. And even though he got sent down to Memphis with their AAA affiliate for reasons I still have yet to understand, he made, some slight tweaks with his mechanics at the plate and has found himself again back up in the show with St. Louis. And I don't think he's going back to Memphis anytime soon again, if he can help it with the way that he's playing right now. And he is looking like the 5-tool player that he was exhibited to be and projected to be by so many scouts and more as of late for a St. Louis team that really needs him to be. But yeah, I expect a lot of power on both sides. But when you look at the pitching matchups, as Miles alluded to, yeah, you got to be feeling real good if you're a Cub fan right now. And like I said, these games being against a division rival, you need them, especially when you have an opponent like Philadelphia coming into town on Tuesday of next week.
No, yeah, you're right, and I still don't understand why they sent out Jordan Walker, but good to see that he's back and helping this team because they need it desperately, and at the end of the day they're still in the race. I know, like I've always liked these these games where they other leagues go into other countries and all that. It's just cool because you get to kind of like gauge their attention or for the game and all that, and just cool to grow it because as we saw in the World Baseball Classic, it's more of a world game than I think people give credit for. So it's good to see. And I already heard that they're considering more games over there with France and Germany. So those would be pretty cool to see that as well overall. But yeah, those games again on Saturday, I think one's at 12 and the one on Sunday is at 9. So yeah, hopefully it's a good matchup. But moving on to the last thing we'll talk about today, which is the All-Star. The finalists came out today, and for the first two of each position and outfielders, I know the NL, I think they have 4 finalists. AL, I think they have like 6 or 7, something like that. But I know Otani and Acuna, they're the top vote getters. They're in. But I did want to ask you guys about a couple positions in there that are very interesting. And I know Gabe has something to say when it comes to AL outfielders. And we'll start right there because I know Gabe wants to talk about that. With the AL outfielders, they had the finalists. They got is Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Randy Rosarena, Jordan Alvarez, Kevin Kiermaier, Adolis Garcia. And we talked about it before we came on. Luis Roberts not there. Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, Kevin Kiermaier, he's a hell of an outfielder with the glove. But what Luis Roberts doing right now, I mean, I just don't know how it's not being held in a high regard. I understand that the White Sox haven't performed up to the levels in which people across the country, as well as the Chicagoland area, expected them to. But he's a guy that deserves some accolades behind his name for the way in which he's played. And while he has a Gold Glove of his own that he earned his rookie season here in Chicago, he's putting together the best year of his career thus far. He has a career high 18 home runs. It's been one of the first seasons which he's fully been healthy. And you talk about how he has an OPS over 800, and over the month of June has had an OPS over 900. And if not for him, there's no telling where this ball club would be. And La Pantera is a guy who, if he continues to ascend and stay disciplined at the plate, you know, a couple times here and there, he could easily be a top 10 player in the sport. And Adolis Garcia barely making it too was something that kind of fascinated me as well, because when you look at the way in which he's been playing with 16 home runs, leads the league in RBIs with 58, he's a guy that is a perennial all-star to me, as long as he's producing at the level in which he has. And I feel like you have to award winning. And I just was fascinated with how it took a late minute push for him to get into this. Because at one point in time, he was just outside of the top 6 guys. So I just don't know what fans are watching to a certain degree. I don't. I even saw like Yasmani Grandal was top 10 among catchers. And as much as I like Yaz, I don't, with the season that he's had compared to previous years, which have been much better, I didn't get that either. So it's kind of like, what are we watching? You know, and I'll say this though, Canada showed up for the American League. It's a lot of Blue Jays. And it's interesting because when you look at the standings, like when you look at the standings, if I didn't know anything about baseball, I would probably think that Toronto has the best record in the American League right now. I would, based off of these final selections that you have to choose from for positions in the All-Star game.
Yeah, and they sit at 41-35, 10.5 games back of the Rays. So they're still in the hunt for a playoff spot, no doubt. But yeah, the fact that they have that, I mean, yeah, it's funny. But it just goes to show as well with the big fan bases like the Cubs as well, as you mentioned with Kiermaier, because I mean, he doesn't deserve to be in there with the 760 OPS. You got Mancini, who's a top 5 for first baseman. I mean, that's just flat out ridiculous. Like, love the guy, great guy overall, but just as a player has not been just. I don't even want to look at his OPS.
Right.
That's how bad it is. But
I get it with the Cubs. I get it with the Cubs though. But like the Blue Jays, I get it too, because you do have a country.
Yeah, true. You have
but like the Cubs are one of the most like profitable franchises in all of baseball. We know the story, history. Yeah, that has its perks and benefits. But like I didn't know that Canadians were really into baseball like that. But it's cool to see. I mean, because I haven't seen that since the early 90s. With the Blue Jays, and they do have a great franchise, might I add, but I couldn't get that.
yeah. Oh, and Gabe, also before I move on to Miles, but who would you pick as your 3 starting outfielders for the AL out of that group? Out of Judge, Trout, Rosarena, Alvarez, Kiermaier, and Garcia.
Ooh, that's tough. As my starters, I would have to go with Aaron Judge. I would have to also go with. Man, I hate to do this because Mike Trout is really the face of the sport here in America, but Randy Rosarena has been incredible this season. I think he deserves to be lauded for it. And
100%.
Yeah, I would also say, I would say Aaron Judge, Randy Rosarena, and Jordan Alvarez. Even though he's out and he won't be able to play, I think he deserves to be selected by the fans as a starter and have an injury replacement on his behalf, because he's one of the best bats in the game, and he can change games with just one swing. And I've seen him do it many times. And I really think he's one of the more underappreciated players in the game today. And I don't know whether or not that has to do with him playing for a team that's been known for being in, you know, in a dark place with fans or whatever, due to the things that we know that they did 5 years ago, but he deserves his praise.
Yeah, and I think Judge might not play either, unfortunately. They were saying that he might come back. They're hoping that he could come back before the All-Star break, but odds are they're going to play it safe and, not bring him back. But we'll see. Hopefully he's healthy enough to play because, man, I just hate every All-Star game. There's one guy, big guy like that who doesn't play. And I'm like, man, can we ever just have one healthy All-Star game? And it's like impossible to have that in there. But and you mentioned it with Trout that unfortunately, he's not in the top 3, but man, he's still one of the best players in baseball, but there has been some noticeable regression with him compared to other years, whether it be defensively, with his OAA, or also just in general with his offense. And it's saying a lot though, because he's still one of the best players in baseball. Regression for him is a career year for somebody else. So it's still funny to me. And also it'll be one of those things, a topic of conversations. When in the next few years does he play more of the DH role? Does he do that? But that's a conversation for another day. But Miles, your opinion on these American League outfielders, and who would you get as the top 3? I know Gabe picked some good picks there with Jordan and Judge, but who, in your opinion, are the top 3 American League outfielders?
Before I start, I want to say this. I know we live in. I look. I want to be nice when I say this. I'm a nice guy. I'm nice. I understand that there are certain things stat-wise that we don't value as much as we used to. I understand. But if there's a fan that looks me in the eye and says that Kevin Kiermaier is more of an all-star worthy candidate than Luis Robert Jr., I don't know what I'm going to do. It's not going to be good. I'm going to run away. I don't know. I listen. We watch the games. Watch baseball. Oh, my God. And this is no offense to Kevin Kiermaier at all.
I said the same thing, bro.
Mm-hmm. Bro has 190 at-bats, 4 home runs, 17 driven in. Excuse me?
I said the same thing.
And see, this is the same team. I'm going to go on the same rant that I went on last year when it came to Freddie Freeman. Watch the game. I am so tired of this because guess what? Next year, I'm going to go on the same rant again. It's not going to change. But I just, bro, this pisses me off so much because I know as fans, we have so much control when it comes to the All-Star voting and everything, and it's good, and certain players deserve things here and there, right? But the ballers got a ball. You got to give guys credit who deserve to be in the All-Star game. And I'm not a fan. That's all. I'm putting it very simply.
No,
I think it is. Man, whew. I think for me at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things for me in terms of looking at outfielders is just you got to put Aaron Judge out there. He's a must. Mike Trout has regressed this year, but that's definitely something that you look at a player like that. This is something that's always going to stay that way. Mm-hmm. Randy Rosarena has been a dog this year, bro. He's been a dog. You got to put him out there, and yeah, Jordan, man. For me, that's not hard. That's not hard. The numbers don't lie. We gotta do this fair. We gotta do this very fair. So I think it's important for fans to kind of recognize that. As much as I want to vote my favorite player, and I also, just from a ball player's perspective, I want to see guys in there who deserve to be there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if, yeah, no, hey, yo, I'm feeling it, Miles. That Miles' anger today is on point today.
It's from a ball player's perspective. It's like,
no, but I get it. I get
real recognizes real. You know what I mean?
I get
like
it.
Guys deserve more credit than they get, and that's what pisses me off about it.
Yeah.
Even as a fan, I feel your pain on that. Mm-hmm. Even as a fan, because I still try to look at it through a player's lens, man. And when you put all that into perspective the way you do, Miles, I have that gripe as well, because even if Luis Robert isn't in your top 6, fine, but like how he fell outside the top 20, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't. He's been all around. I see the highlights on a nightly basis. I'm at the ballpark. I was there when he, hit 3 home runs in a row of 3 straight days against Houston. The man is an all-star this season. I don't give a damn how you feel. He's an all-star.
Facts.
Yeah, I agree. And just the fact that like MLB like tries to avoid this by having the stats right there when you vote, and yet people still disregard the stats and just vote for their favorite team's player is crazy to me. But I mean, I'm the and I just doesn't make any sense. And like the thing is too is like it doesn't matter how much I'm a Cubs fan. I would never be like I'm not gonna vote for a White Sox player. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, and there's plenty of people. I'm sure plenty of people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure plenty of people do that, which doesn't make any sense. Like it's an all-star game, bro. Like it's not that serious where like you have to like shun your other teams or
and
like
whether
teams
you vote for them or not, every team is represented in the MLB All-Star.
Yeah.
So it don't matter. They gotta pick at least one player from every team now. So it doesn't matter. And I voted for Cub players in the National League that I like. So especially if they were deserving of it, whether I was a Cub fan or not.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's some people just like I don't get their strategy for voting, but unfortunately, it's Canada this year. I mean, remember that one year it was Kansas City. Even though they were good, even though they were good, but that was still just out of line.
Yeah, that was crazy.
A couple more positions I want to talk about. We'll go in the now in the NL, where they got like I said, Ronald Acuna is gonna go to the he's automatically going to the All-Star game with how many votes he has. You got a race between Arenado, Austin Riley at third base, Luis Arraez and Albies at second base. But for you guys, I want to, and you know what? Because you mentioned Freddie Freeman, Miles. So I want to talk about Freddie Freeman in first base. Who would you guys take? And we'll start with you, Miles. Who would you take? And it might be easy for you in this case, and you might just say Freddie, but I still want to hear your case anyway between Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson at first base.
It's tougher than I think it would be because I think Matt Olson has actually been very good for this team, and has really made kind of his own name, following up a very tough act in Freddie Freeman. I think I'm still going with Freddie Freeman just because I think he has solidified himself longer. Continues to be a leader in the clubhouse, and obviously Matt Olson is a leader in his own right. But Freddie Freeman, throughout his entire year, has continued to, just produce and perform for both teams that he's been on. And for example, when his first year with the Dodgers, when he was still missing the Braves, he was still performing well for the Dodgers, knowing that his heart was still in Atlanta, still playing his butt off for Los Angeles, still playing hard for his teammates. That is awesome. That's awesome for him to have that great of a year, even though maybe some people didn't see it and wanted to vote for the wrong players into the All-Star game. But he still made it into the All-Star game, so they can shut up. So I think you look at someone like Freddie Freeman, and it's just, for me, I got to go Freddie Freeman, but Matt Olson also deserves all the credit in the world.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So, Gabe, who would you go for the NL first baseman right now?
Man, that's real tough. That's real tough. I get the argument for Freeman. I do. I think he's gonna be an all-star no matter what, whether he gets in as a starter or reserve, and deservedly so. But it's kind of hard to go against teams that have guys on it that are winning and playing a major part in it. And that's what Matt Olson is doing right now in Atlanta. 21 home runs, 52 knocked in. This Brave team is not your traditional National League team. They hit for power, and they do it in bunches. And Matt Olson is pretty much like Georgia Power himself right now with the way he's been hitting down in Cobb County for the Braves. And I got to give it to him. I just do. I know Freeman has a 961 OPS. I know he has an MLB best 25 doubles, batting over 300, which is far better than Olson. But man, Matt Olson, like you said, Miles, to be filling in for Freddie Freeman has done more than just filling in. He's cemented a place for himself in Atlanta, and it's kind of a cool story to see when you consider the fact that he's actually from the state doing that, which is something that the Braves have always been so great at doing when it comes to assessing talent within their home state of Georgia over the last 20 plus years.
Yeah,
they love him too. They love Matt Olson in Atlanta. I saw
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Oh, sorry. And then Gabe, you mentioned with the fact that, you know, like you kind of put into you kind of throw in the ring the fact that the Braves are that good and the fact that Matt Olson's contributing. I mean, it just reminds me that, like, I think my mind changed on that in the sense of, like, for that reason when, like, you know, Stanton won the MVP and the last place Marlins, I get that, you got to give it to the best player, deserving whatever. But, like, also you got to take into consideration how good the team is. You just have to, because if the team's playing well, or if you're playing well but the team isn't, how much are you contributing compared to how much you're doing for yourself or whatever, right? So it's a whole grand scheme of things, and I understand where you're coming from, because definitely Olson is playing for one of the best teams in baseball right now, and he's still a hell of a player, and like you said, he's still gonna make it anyways. But yeah, I think for me, I would go Freeman, just because how good he's played for the Dodgers. He's a 3.2 WAR as well, but it is, you could go either way, and I wouldn't be mad about that, because those are two guys deserving of starting there. And another thing too, when it comes to that, kind of talking about the fact that winners deserve to be represented and all that with the teams, I didn't mention this, but I would also, just because Gabe also picked Jordan, and even though he might not even play either, even the same with Judge. That's why I would pick Adolis Garcia to start the All-Star game as well, just because, just because of the fact that, the Rangers are playing so well. They deserve as much representation as possible. And Adolis Garcia is definitely one of the best run producers in the game, let alone one of the best power hitters. So definitely would love to see him, start the All-Star game there. But the last one I want to ask you guys about is back into the AL. Now, speaking of the Rangers, this is another position where they're going to be battling it out, these two guys, with the Blue Jay. It's Bo Bichette as shortstop, and Corey Seager. Gabe, who would you go in that battle right there? That's one of the hardest ones. Is Bo Bichette for sure is being the best player on the Blue Jays right now, one of the best players in the AL East, one of the best players in the AL. Corey Seager is for sure, again, also one of the best players in the AL. So who would you go in that race right now?
Man, I didn't even realize, I'm just not seeing these finalist lists. I didn't realize how tough it was for Bo Bichette in his road to start in the All-Star game, because after seeing Corey Seager the last two nights as we record this, I see why he gets paid the big bucks. And I've always been familiar with him dating back to his time in LA, but he's batting over 350 and he has an OPS over 1,000. And he's a big time hitter, man. We talk about a guy who had a 5 RBI night against the White Sox when Texas scored 6 runs. To put it, bluntly, he was pretty much their whole offense that game. With the way he's hitting the ball right now, you got to give it to him. You just do it. And the way he's playing with the glove as well, because he had some big plays with the glove in that series. Maybe it's because I just saw him the last couple nights, but I've been impressed with what I've seen all season long from him. In spite of dealing with an injury early on in the year, he's looking like a guy that's on his way to trying to win a batting title.
Yeah, no, and you're right. He, like, the fact that he's played a third of the year and he's done what he's done and accumulated that 2.7 WAR right now that leads the team. Second to Marcus Semien. Just says it all, and how good he's been for them. They definitely would be my pick for Corey Seager there. But Miles, is there a case for Bo Bichette there? Would you pick Bo Bichette, or are you going on the Corey Seager train for this one?
Oof, no, that's tough, because Bo Bichette is on pace for an immaculate season at the moment. Yeah, man, I don't know, and I'm trying to. I'm looking at both their stats as we're talking. I think just with Corey Seager, I don't know, man. He's just been kind of out of his mind this year in terms of his offensive stats. So You could definitely make an argument for both. And both hitters who are hitting over 300 right now. I think I gotta go with Corey Seager, but I don't say that lightly. That's very difficult. Either one of these guys can be starting. So I think there's definitely like a mutual respect for fans when it comes to these players. I'm gonna go with Corey Seager. I think also his contributions to this team this year has been incredible. Seeing this Rangers team really come into their own is great. Great for Rangers fans. And it's cool seeing a winning Texas team at this new ballpark they have for the first time since it was built or it was opened back in 2020. So I'm gonna go with Corey Seager, but I don't take this decision like.
Yeah, no, and I feel the same way with the last thing that we did with Olsen and Freeman. Like these are two guys that are just that good. And Bo Bichette 3.2 WAR, like he's good on both ends of the baseball card. So, yeah, it could go either way, and definitely we'll talk more about these matchups as the All-Star game gets closer and closer. But I think that's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bat Baseball podcast presented by WARR Media. I want to thank Gabe Wilkins for joining us this week. Of course, you can watch him on Open Run as they talk more of the offseason. I'm sure you guys next week will cover Wembenyama and the rest of the draft picks and anything that unfolds over the next hours or so. So thanks for coming on, man. Miles, again, thanks for coming on as well as always. So for Saul Rodriguez and the At Bat podcast, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next week.